Hi guys. So I was just out in the backyard. I was going to play around with hanging my hammock up and doing some experimentation with it. And we've got a really big mulberry tree in the backyard, and it's a big tree, and it's too big for my tree huggers, the straps that fit around a tree that kind of go with the hammock. So I'd brought this piece of line back from my boat and figured I'd use it. And the problem with it is that it was just a wee bit too short to put around the tree and put a bow in each end. So I thought about it, and the solution I came up with was just to do a quick eye splice, which has a couple of advantages. It makes it requires less rope to make a loop than tying a knot, and it's also way stronger than tying a knot, and it's also permanent and no worries about it ever coming undone. So I went ahead and did one side, and I thought maybe I'd show you guys how to do it, to do the other side, just using some really minimal tools. And what's, I guess, a little bit more interesting about this than a standard eye splice in kind of your average piece of new nylon rope is that this rope is far from being new rope. It's old and weathered. I've used it on my boat for years, and for odds and ends, or like hasn't never had a dedicated purpose, but I've had it for a long time. And it started off as a hard laid rope, meaning it's highly twisted together. It's very structurally hard, sturdy, and over the years nylon tends to shrink and become tighter, and so trying to untwist these to splice the line, the strands through is going to be very difficult. And so I thought I'd show you how it's done with this tool here. It's called a Swedish Fid, and basically, rather than just a spike like a marling spike, or using something like a screwdriver to open the lays, what this thing allows you to do, because it's sort of horseshoe shaped, when you put it through the lays here, it's got a nice hollow section that the strand that you're trying to put through will fit through nice and handily. So it's a pretty cool tool, and it's more of a sort of a rigger's or a sailor's sort of tool. But anyways, I thought I'd show you how the splicing happens and how this tool works. And hopefully you can see the kind of the hollow shape of it. So we'll get started. Okay, so the first thing I did, or that we'll do, is after cutting or unraveling the end here, is just put a little bit of tape around each of the three strands so that they don't unravel at all, and gave myself a little bit of line to play with, and put some tape here so it can't unravel any further than this distance. But we'll basically just unlay the rope to about here. And so what's going to happen is this is going to sit somewhere right around here, making this here the size of the eye we're going to make, and then we'll splice this rope into this down here, and then we'll finish it off. So now that I've got the line unlaid, I'm just going to use this little piece of string here to tie a constrictor hitch, and let me do that again for you. Throw sort of an underhand loop. Take your thumb, or with your finger and thumb, flip the loop over, and essentially I've just created a constrictor hitch. And what I'm going to do is use this over the loop here, and when I tighten him down, it's not going to work loose. And essentially I'm going to use this little constrictor hitch to help set the size of eye that I'm going for. So that's roughly about good enough. So I'll just sort of tighten him in, and that will hold him fairly snugly while we start our splicing process. And the way the splicing is going to work is the strand that's just sort of naturally laying right against this full-size piece. I'm going to splice him first. I'm going to give him 2 tucks, and then I'll take the back piece, give him 1, and then we'll come back and do this guy. But let me reset, and I'll just sort of walk through it for you. Okay, so now that I've got the eye sort of nailed down with this constrictor hitch, and I'll put a link to another video that shows the constrictor hitch in detail, and I'll also give you guys a link to a series of videos that shows in great detail how to do the eye splice. I just wanted to run this by you fairly quickly, so at least you can see the basics of how it's done. So we're going to take this piece, this strand here that's sort of naturally laying right next to this full-size piece, and we're going to start by giving him 2 tucks. And we'll use our Swedish Fid to open the line up, push him in strongly, and this guy will go inside the Fid. And even with this tool, it still requires a little bit of force to make it go. With this old and sort of hardened line. So there's one, and we'll do this one more time. So he's coming up. We're going to skip this next piece, and so essentially he's going to come under this piece, over this guy here, and then come under this one. And you'll see how it kind of weaves its way through. And again, requiring a little bit of force. So this is old stiff line. I think it's 1/2 inch line, and it's been around for many years. Okay, so now that we've got the first one done, we'll come around to the one that's hanging out the bottom, right at the very back. And what we're going to do is splice him. So we've been concentrating on the first one. We've done 2 loops, 2 tucks with this first one. So where this first one comes up, the very bottom one is going to come down, or come into the rope. So where this guy's coming up, that's where the next one goes through. So again with the Fid, and this would be much more difficult to do without the Fid. The Fid really does make it easy to do this. So the strand pulls through, and he's in. And so now where this guy comes up, our last little guy here will enter. Enters, and now I'll just spend a quick moment pulling each of them tight. Now, I'm not recommending for your first splicing attempt that you use really old weathered line. It's exactly the opposite. If you use weathered rope, it's going to make your life way harder. It's a little bit harder to learn. If you're doing this for your first time, use some brand new rope that's nice and soft. It's much easier to do. But now that we've done one tuck for each strand, we've got our basics. So from here, now we just pick any strand. It doesn't matter which one, and he's just simply going to come over. He's going to come over top of a strand and tuck under the next one, and we'll do that for each one. So initially our first strand I did 2 tucks and then 1 for each, and that's equalized, and you'll see the finished product. They're nice and equal. Once you've done that first one, then after that it's just each guy does 1. So there's no they're all treated equally after this first tuck has been completed. Okay, so for the second tuck, we'll open the line up. So this guy here will come over top of this guy and under this one. There you go. Give him a pull, and make sure the rope is still nicely twisted together. Then we'll do the next one. So this guy here, where he comes up, this guy goes in. And I'm going to try to maintain the twist in the line as I do this. Fid comes out. He's laid in there nicely. And it's time for number 3, where this guy comes up, this guy goes in. He's going to slide in. I keep the twist going. There we go. So we've got our second one. Give them all a nice tug. Seat them fairly well. So now we've got 2 tucks. So to do an eye splice that you don't really care too much about the strength of it. I mean, with this line, it's just going to be holding me up in my hammock. It's way, way, way stronger than I need it to be. But for a minimum, you need to do 3 tucks, just to be confident that it's not going to come undone on you. So we've done 2. We need to do at least 1 more. If I cared a bit more about the weight that was being required, I would do 5. And if this were for something that would be out of sight or carrying heavy loads over my head or something, I'd do 7 tucks. So that this would be woven in quite a ways down and then finished. I'm just going to I'm going to essentially do tucks until I've run out of line. My guess it'll be probably 4, maybe 5, but we'll see how it goes. But I'm just going to continue with this exact same process. I'm just going to repeat what we just did, and when I get done and to the end of the line, we'll come back and I'll show you how it looks, and then we'll proceed from there. So I've managed to put 4 tucks in this one, and I kind of don't have enough length, particularly on this guy, to do a number 5. So we'll just leave it at 4, and I'm happy enough with that. That's more than strong enough for what I'm going to be using it for. And one of the reasons why I was being a bit skimpy on the length here is because I'm actually trying to, or the reason for doing this whole process is because this rope was pretty close to being too short, and so I'm just trying to I guess be a little bit miserly on the length of line that I take up doing the splicing. But this will be more than strong enough. So basically we're done that portion, so now I can remove this Constrictor Hitch, which held things quite nicely, and this little bit of electrical tape, and then we can look at finishing things. So you'll notice, compared to the one that I did earlier before it occurred to me to videotape this, this guy here looks a lot more knobby and lumpy. for lack of a better term, than this one. So I'll just show you the quick and dirty trick. That's it seems pretty low tech, but it's actually really the recommended way of solving this lumpy problem and getting these things all seated nicely. And once that's done, I'll just put a little whipping on the end so that these strands can't unravel, and we're done. So let me show you how to make this smooth, and then we'll proceed. So here's the low-tech method of solving the lumpiness in your splice to finish it off nice and smoothly. Basically, you put it on the floor and step on it and roll it underfoot for a minute or something. There's no time amount really required. Just roll it underfoot a little bit and put your weight on it, and really try to seat those strands and get them all nice and laying down flat. Essentially, by putting your weight on it and doing this, you'll beat them into submission. They'll learn how to behave themselves. So now let's compare to the original. So this is the first guy I did, and you'll notice this guy is no longer lumpy at all. And with the method of splicing that we did, you can see how the original strand and the spliced in strand meet up very tightly here, and makes for a very nice strong splice. So yeah, and I mean, we could just be happy here and cut these tails off, but I thought since this is going to be kind of living outside in the elements and stuff, I'll just spend a minute and put a whipping on, which is essentially using a small twine or string to prevent the ends from unraveling or fraying at all. So we're ready to start whipping. What I've done is I removed the electrical tape from the end of these strands, and sort of open them up a little bit so that they will sit, make it sort of a uniform thickness around this standing piece here, so we don't have too much of too many lumps. It'll just sort of transition relatively smoothly from here down to the diameter of the single strand. And I'm going to use this waxed nylon twine here. Got maybe, I don't know, I'm guessing maybe 3 feet or something like that. And I'm not too worried about aesthetics or something, because really this is an old rope that's just going to be living out in my backyard, and for me to occasionally hang my hammock from. And yeah, so I don't really care too much what it looks like. I just don't want it to unravel. Typically what you want to do is the length of whipping should be approximately equal to the diameter of the rope. So if we have a 1/2 inch diameter of rope, the whipping length should be approximately half an inch long down the rope. And that's more for an aesthetics thing than anything else. So I'm guessing that this will get us close, but if I'm off a little bit one way or the other, I really don't care. So here's how we'll do it. I'm going to form a loop in the rope, in the string, with one piece crossing over and heading in the direction that I'm going to be twisting this around. And again, I'll link us to a video that shows this in sort of maybe greater detail. But hopefully you'll at least get the idea from here. So I'm going to hold this loop down pretty strongly with my thumb, pinch it in with the nail even, and for your first turn or two with the string, don't pull too hard, because you'll pull it right out from under your thumb, and then you'll have to start again. And what I want is each of these turns to lay sitting right next to its predecessor. So hopefully no gaps as we go. once I've got a turn or two in there, then I can start pulling hard. And by hard, I mean basically as hard as I can. I want these to be nice and tight, because at the end, when we get to the very end of this, this piece that's coming around, the tail end of him is going to come into this loop, and we're going to pull this loop. We're going to draw it tight. You'll see. I'll show you in a moment. But we'll draw this tight, and the whole thing will it'll get drawn into the whipping here, and it will hold itself nice and snug. But that relies on you pulling it tight as you go. So as long as you're pulling it tight, it will not unravel on you when we get to the end. So we'll just continue along here. And again, I'm not going to be too fanatical about this because really nobody is going to see it other than the squirrels in the backyard. When I do stuff that's going to be on the boat, I tend to take a little bit more care and make sure everything looks perfect. Okay, so the whipping is just about done. I've put all the wines into it that I can, and still reach around. I might be able to get one more, but it's just, cutting it a little bit too tight, too close. So you'll see the original loop that we left here, and this original piece that was sort of the beginning of the string, and this is the end that I've been winding the whole time. So to finish this, I'm just going to put the end that I've been winding the whole time inside the loop and lay him flat, give him a little pull, and put my finger on it and hold it down. Then we'll take the other end, and you see how this loop shrinks, pulls tight, and now the end that I've been winding is now captured by that loop. And what I'm going to do is pull so that this loop comes right into the middle of the whipping. So it's right now, we're right on the edge. I'm going to pull until he's basically right in the middle. Once he's in the middle, then I can cut off both strands. And the tightness of this whipping will prevent it from unraveling. So if you watch closely, and hopefully you can see, you should see this loop, as I pull, move down towards the center of the whipping. And it's pretty much in the right spot now. So now it's just a matter of trimming these two ends off with a knife and trimming the excess off here. And if you want, you can melt the excess down so that it'll be completely nicely finished. Okay, so I finished the finishing pieces. Cut the tails off the whipping, trim the excess from the spliced strands, and just gave it a quick rough melt, and we're basically done. So yeah, I mean, this is one of those sorts of things that takes way longer to show and explain than it does to actually do. It's probably less than a 10-minute job, probably in the 5 or 6 minute range. For me to do this if I were to just sit down and do it, and is well worth it. So there's lots of advantages to splicing. One being it uses less rope, the other being it's permanent and I don't need to ever worry about this thing coming undone, and the third being that it's much stronger than tying a knot. So even a very efficient knot like a bowline will reduce the breaking strength of your rope down to about 70% of what it once was. So if your rope used to be able to support 100 pounds and you tie a bowline in it, the very best you're going to get out of it maybe is about 70 pounds. And other knots are way less efficient than that. A splice, you'll retain 100% of the strength of your rope, and actually the spliced part is much stronger. It's actually about 200%. Because not only do I have like the original strength and diameter of the first strand, I've actually got 2 strands of rope acting. So it's basically as though I've got 2 pieces of rope here, so it's kind of 200%, and then down to a single strand. So something to consider if you're going to be hanging something up or using a rope in a permanent kind of a way. Splicing can be a really good solution. And so the way I'm going to be using this is going to be going around a really large mulberry tree, and essentially doing one of these, sort of making a loop around the tree here, and this free end will attach to my hammock, and as my hammock pulls here, it will draw this rope tight and hug the tree quite snugly so that I can't slide up and down the tree, and will give me basically an easy way to hang my hammock in the backyard without having to reach around this giant tree all the time. So, hope you enjoyed it, and follow the links that we'll provide to some more details on three-strand splicing. And there's lots of other things that you can do. So this is just one way of doing a simple eye splice, but there's lots of other cool stuff that can be done. So yeah, check that out too. So thanks very much for watching.